There we go.
Hi. Oh no. So I don't know what's going on. Did the music go for you or did it just stop?
It just stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, it played. The music played, but then it cut off early. We didn't get to our little island beat at the end.
I know. I love that little part. Yeah. I don't know what's happening, Dawn. It's like all of a sudden everything is shutting down here. My internet seems like it's freezing. I see myself in slow motion. My second monitor just died. Who knows what's going to happen here?
All right. Well, welcome to Story Strategy Live.
Welcome to the land of technical difficulties.
It's been like that all week. It's just been a week.
Yeah.
And I've decided that with everything else going on in the world, all of the little things in the world just need to work. Like technology needs to work. Yes, it just needs to be, that's just polite. That's just how things need to be.
Yep.
So
it doesn't seem like it's going that way for me. We are like both like moving in slow motion. I don't know.
You're moving fine on my side.
So when I go like this, does it look like slow motion as I try to demonstrate what it looks like?
No, you look just fine. You look great. Hi, Julie. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, it's just been a week. So we're here and we're going to talk about what's holding writers back other than technology. That's what we're going to talk about today.
We all know what's holding me back today. And I'm so annoyed because I usually have the notes up here and now I'm like obsessed with getting it working again so that I can have it the way I want it. And this is like my life. I can't just be like, oh, okay, let's flex and move forward. I'm like, I can fix it. But
hi, Kate. Hi, Stephanie. Okay, so while you're fixing the monitor,
you talk for a minute.
I'm going to tell a dog story because right before we went live, you were occupying the puppy with a toy.
Yes, I have a puppy in the same room as me, which is probably a terrible idea, but we'll see what happens.
No, puppies are always a good idea. But except for in my house. In my house, they're not a good idea right now. But so we have Penny, the Penny dog that y'all have seen and everything. And her and my son have started having a battle over who's going to go get her toy. Because now you gotta understand, she's big. So she's got a bone that's like this big, that's like super rubber, I could fend off an intruder with it if I had to, type bone that she carries around with her. And she doesn't like for you to touch the bone. You're only allowed to look at the bone. Is it like
a real bone?
Yeah, no, it's made out of rubber. No, it's made out of rubber.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so she won't like snap at you or anything if you try to take it away from her. But if you were to come to my house and she decided you were an okay human, she would walk up to you with her bone in her mouth and show it to you.
Okay.
And when you're like, oh, let me have the bone, she just turns her head. And it's like, oh, no, you're still here. We still see you.
But you're gone. Oh, there you are.
Okay, there you are. She's back.
Stop touching things. Oh God, it just went black again. Now my actual computer is going black. I have a big problem here. Oh no. Are you still there?
I'm here. I can see you.
I can't see anything. Oh, okay, well, it came back.
Don't touch anything. Don't breathe. Just sit there. So anyway, so Peter is my son. Peter and Penny have been fighting over this toy because Penny will take it out in the backyard and you can tell her, go find your toy, and she'll look all over the house in the backyard until she finds it. Like she has certain places she goes and looks for it. She knows those words. She knows what they mean.
Yeah.
So she has it with her right now, which is why she's not freaking out since I keep saying it. But so she'll leave it out in the backyard and come in the house. And then she starts acting like a child who's lost their lovey because she'll go up and just lean on him and whine. And he's like, what's the matter? Oh, you lost your toy. We'll go get it. And he can open the back door and she will run to where it is, point to it with her nose, and then run back in the house. And
like, you come get it over here for me.
And so he'll be standing by the back door going, go get your toy, go get it, go get your toy. And she'll come over and just sit on her bed.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Well, yeah, exactly. That sounds like a good idea. You should totally go get my toy.
I would like that. Thank you.
So it's funny because the first couple of times, like he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'll go get it. And so he'd go get it and bring it into her.
Oh no, so he set the precedent.
So then the other day he was like, I'm not going. I'm like, you realize you're arguing with a dog. And he's like, I don't care. I'm not going. And so he stood by the back door and told her to go get it a couple of times. And she got her little stubborn look. And so he just shut the door and walked off. And you would have thought he set her toy on fire in front of her. He shut the door and walked off, and like her little ears drooped and she just dropped her head. And she watched him walk out of the room. And then she sat there for a minute, and then she went over and just sat by the back door like she does when she wants out. And I opened the door and she went and got it and brought it in. I don't know who's training who. I don't know. And the dog's 7 years old. It's not like she's pretty much trained as she's going to get at this point.
Now she's training you.
Yes.
That's funny. Cute.
So yeah, that was she's over here in her chair now looking at me because she keeps hearing me say her name. But she's like, I hear you say my name. I'm not getting up until there's an offer of some kind of reward. So,
yeah, I don't see any treats. I'm going to sit here.
No. So that's how things have been going around here.
A battle of wills, you say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on our end, I don't know. Things generally good. I don't know. My husband's truck broke this week. Now my monitor. So maybe things aren't that good. I don't know.
I think you need to stop touching stuff. I think you need to just don't put hands. Stay away from the children at this point.
I don't think it's me. I didn't drive the truck. I never drive the truck. I hate the truck. It's like he has this stupid. So one day my husband said, I need a new truck. And I said, no, you don't. And so that was all that we said about it. And then we had a Tahoe that we'd had for a really long time. And it was, at that point, we did not have any kind of RV or trailer or anything like that. But he would talk all the time about how we were going to get one. And I kept saying, no. We had little tiny kids and like are hoping for college one day, that sort of thing. And so one day, the Tahoe was having some problems. I knew that. But one day I came home from work and there's a giant red truck sitting in our driveway. And all the men in the neighborhood were in our driveway looking at it. And I was like, whose truck is this? And he was like, it's mine. And I was like, we need to have a chat. And then he was like, it's for the trailer. I was like, we don't have a trailer. And he was like, well, not yet. Guess what we have now?
Yeah, that's how it begins. The battle of wills right there.
Anyway, yeah. So I suppose we should talk about things that make writing hard.
We should talk about writer's block. So today what we're talking about is everything that holds writers back from being successful. Everything, I should rephrase that, of everything within a writer's control that is holding them back.
Well, we'll touch on some other things too that you may not even realize are holding you back that are out of your control, but we can fix those.
So we decided to start with the easy stuff. So some of the easy stuff is just lack of knowledge, that you woke up one day, decided you were going to write a book, and you just don't know what you don't know, And you usually figure that out after you start trying to write the book and then realize like this is actually not as easy as I thought. Or you get stuck and you're kind of like, I don't know what to do here. And that's where you realize like, gosh, there are craft books and classes I could take that might be able to help me through this. Well, and that's when you realize there's a lot more to this than just putting words on paper.
Right.
There's expectations and structure, and people have opinions about how that should be done. And
I think it's kind of like, there's a lot of jobs where you look at someone doing it and you're like, oh, anybody could do that. Like, I don't know. I can't think of an example right now, but I think writing is one of those things because it's something that we all have to do regularly all through school and in our jobs. And So we're like, I can write. Oh no, did my internet go out? My little camera just went off.
You're frozen, but
is my camera on?
We can still hear you.
It's so weird, the little green light. Okay, I'll just keep talking. That's a great pose that I'm frozen in.
Yes. You look very
God's sake, what is going on?
Oh.
Okay, that didn't work. Anyway, my point was that I think because we all read, we look at books and think, I can do that. That should be easy.
And that's because when you're reading, the story structure and the rules and all of that kind of stuff it's already built in. And so you don't realize, it feels intuitive. You don't realize that that's something that somebody worked at. And Julie is chiming in and saying, that's so me, who knew there were rules. And that's very common. That's very, very common for new writers to jump in and be like, oh, Nancy's gone, so I'm going to keep talking.
Sorry, I am here. I'm trying to make it work.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. And so that's when I've found that new writers do one of two things. Or I should say three things. One is they decide, well, my book is magic and it doesn't have to follow any of those rules and it's magically going to be successful.
It's going to be so unique. It'll be like, we need to write a blog post about this.
We do. And it's going to be amazing and everybody's going to love it. Which may be true. There are some books that happens for, but a lot of times it turns out more just no, everybody just doesn't understand it, or they don't. There's a craft to making the story so it doesn't feel like you're just writing in a diary, and it doesn't feel like you're just telling a police report of this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. So that's when, like Nancy said, you can do the writing courses. You find out there's craft books, there's critique groups and writing groups. And those are two different things. A chapter of your local writing group, usually they bring in, when the world is normal, they bring in speakers and you have workshops and that kind of thing. And then a critique group is where you actually read your pages or you trade pages with a critique partner and they give opinions and that kind of thing. One thing that helps that is kind of terrifying is entering writing contest, because if you can enter it with the idea, especially for the new writers, if you can enter it with the idea of I'm doing this to get feedback, I'm doing this to see what people think about my story and what they say I could fix. And it's okay if I don't final. It's okay if I don't win and get the big publishing contract. I just want to see what people think. Those can hurt when you get that back because that's anonymous. And my suggestion on that is always to read the feedback, take a day, take a breath, maybe have a glass of wine, and then read it again a couple of days later. Nancy, are you with us? Okay, I'm going to keep going because I don't know if she can hear us. The next step on that is for if you have people in your life that you trust to read it, you can use beta reader.
Okay, now I see me again, but you have frozen and I don't hear anything.
Okay, I see you, but you're frozen. And I don't know if anybody else can hear me. Somebody in the comments, can you let me know if you can hear me? Anybody? Okay, well, Nancy's gone again. Can anybody hear me? Are we still live? This is going to be awesome later on the YouTube channel. Oh, good. Thank you, Brooke and Stephanie, because I thought I was talking to myself. I'm just going to keep going. So, oh, there we go. Okay. So if you trust people in your life to read and give you an honest opinion, and that's the difference, is you need somebody to give you an opinion on, yes, this is amazing, or it's okay, but you need to fix this, this, and this. You also don't want to get somebody who's so overly critical that they're just going to discourage you forever. And that's after that is when editors like Nancy and I, story coaches, that kind of thing come in. So sometimes what's holding you back is you start to write and you realize this is really a job and there's really rules to it and expectations. The other part that can be a little discouraging is people starting to write and they didn't realize that publishing was such a business. They don't know the difference between indie publishing and traditional publishing. And they haven't researched yet that you need editors and more editors, and you need a cover designer, and you need somebody to format the book. And what about Amazon, and how do you put it up there? And people who do promotional ads and the PR, all of that kind of thing. So that's something that can become very overwhelming when you first enter this. And my suggestion on that is write the book first. Write the book. Get the book in the best quality it can be, and then you start looking into learning about all of the other steps. Julie asked, do you enter a contest before editing? Generally, you would want to have a clean copy, like you've got the contest or you've got your story as good as you can make it on your own. I wouldn't suggest doing like a full developmental edit or anything like that if you're just entering a contest, because usually the contest is only, I think, like 20 pages, sometimes things like that. So it can be a good place to get some of that first reader feedback. If you have people who you trust to read your work, if you have them read it and then enter the contest. I remember, and this was over 10 years ago, the first contest that I entered, the first feedback I got when I opened it, it was, you don't even know how to format this correctly. And that hurt. And so I don't know that the cost on and return is worth getting a full edit before you enter a contest if you can self-edit pretty well. But I would suggest very carefully researching what their expectations and requirements are. So those are the easy things.
Hi.
Hi, she's back. Can you see us? Can you hear us? I don't think
frozen.
She can see us.
I can hear you.
I think Nancy's struggling. Okay, so now we're talking about the hard stuff. And I know this is what a lot of people were showing up for today's podcast for, was some of this hard stuff. Oh, now we have two of Nancy. Oh, look. Oh, God, and we can hear me in the background. You got to fix that. Okay, everybody take a deep breath before we get to the hard stuff. And we've got the Nancy twins.
I'm going to get rid of one of me.
Yeah,
hold on, and it's going to get quieter. I think, let me just do this.
There.
Oh, God. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
You all clear? We can see you. We can hear you.
I am so sorry, you guys. This is not my technology day. And honestly, everything was just running perfectly fine until we got to 4:30 and then this. But okay.
Okay, so I covered all the easy stuff about learning writing as a craft and learning the publishing business. And we were just about to hit the hard stuff. We were just about to hit what really holds you back.
Okay.
And the first thing we're going to look at, which I think everything else kind of stems from, is I think the biggest thing that holds you back is fear.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the fear of failing. It's the fear of, oh my God, I'm writing romance and my mother may read this. It's the fear of telling somebody that you're going to write a book and then they're constantly asking you when that book's going to be finished. And then when that book doesn't magically shoot to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, suddenly they're like,
Yeah, a lot of it is about the way that you think about yourself, who you are in your own head and who you think you are in the heads of everyone you know, who you might mention this thing to. And I think that I want to say that external piece, worrying about what other people think, should not be a big deal, but I think it actually is one of the things that holds a lot of people back. Even like I'm doing a little story coaching, which is, not something that I do a ton of. It's mostly what Dawn does, but with a writer who's like, if I told you who it was, you would be like, oh, for sure, this person never, ever thinks that they're not doing a good job. They must know what a fantastic writer they are. And the texts that come in like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. How did this ever work before? I can't do it. Like it happens to everybody. But part of it is the fear that author has of not living up to whatever she's done before and what people will think and what people will say. So if you're just starting out, it's not that same exact thing, but it's coming from the same place. It's, if I put this thing out and it doesn't do whatever people might expect, whatever I expect or hope, then what happens? You know, who will I be? That would be awful.
Right. And I think, and that a lot of that is imposter syndrome. And that's what we're going to hit on next. And a lot of it is the solution to that fear. Of course, it never goes away. We both know absolutely multi-published award-winning authors who have signed bazillions of books and smiled at fans. And the whole time they're thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this again. Mm-hmm. I've got to enjoy this right now. It was just
lucky. Yeah.
It was just lucky. It was just a fluke. And so there's the fear of failure on all sides. And there's the fear of disappointing somebody on all sides. Mm-hmm. So you have to figure out, what does success look like to you? And we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week. But basically, is your only definition of success seeing this book published on the shelves in Barnes & Noble under award-winning fiction? Right. Or does success look like, I wrote a book and I finished it, and that puts me ahead of 99% of the people who start out and say, I'm going to write a book?
But once you've done it, you don't feel that anymore. You don't feel that sense of satisfaction that you did it. And that's one of the things that, as Delancey, my husband, always says to me, because now I think I've written 25 or 26 books. And a lot of them, you know, are things that I've promised to something or other, and I have to turn in on a certain deadline. And it's kind of like, okay, that's off my desk. And he'll be like, did you finish a book today? And I'll be like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well then let's celebrate. And I'm like, no, I got to start another book tomorrow. We don't have time to do that. Like you start to.
But that's important to do. It's important to
move the goalpost, right?
Yes.
And so you start by thinking like, gosh, it'd be kind of cool if I could come up with like a fun book plot. And then once you've done that, amazing. You're like, well, but I haven't written the book. So then you're going to write the book. And then when you get through all the hard stuff and you've written the first draft, you're like, yeah, but I mean, it's a rough draft. I haven't done anything with it. So, you know, like you can just keep moving that goalpost that you never enjoy your success. And you always feel like you're not doing well enough.
So that's why it's important to enjoy the little successes. Take the time to be like, hey, I wrote a book, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it's just that you put a sticker in your planner that says, I completed a book today. You know, there's a reason why we like rewards.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from what is my definition of success, which again, like I said, this is mostly next week's, you've got to figure out what reward works for you. And what am I going to, if I get this book rough draft finished, then I'm going to spend the money to join my local writing chapter. And then I'm going to make myself go to one of the meetings. You know, here's a little secret about the fear. Everybody has it. And it's the people who don't that are really kind of scary, actually. It's the, not that you should not celebrate your success, and not that you should not be proud of yourself. Absolutely be proud of yourself. But it's the brand new authors who have written their first book ever during NaNoWriMo and are telling you that it's going to be the absolute bestseller and Netflix is going to option it next week, that make you kind of be like, maybe have it edited first. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, well, you don't want to shoot that person down either, because what a fantastic gift to have that kind of confidence.
Yes.
But
yes,
and then
and that's when you just lay out the steps. Okay, before we get to Netflix, here's what you got to do.
I mean, that's just a childish, unrealistic expectation. I think that maybe we all entertain at some point, but the ones that I think. And maybe for that person too, like when you meet one of those really established authors who doesn't have the fear, who says, "Oh, I don't think like that. It's fine. I know that my next book will be a bestseller." Blah blah blah. I think that comes from the same place. It's all fear, right? That bestseller has so much insecurity that they can't admit that they have the fear,
right? And
the new writer has so much, bravado covering up the fear But I think that's what it all is. Like all we want as humans is to be accepted, to be told we did a good job, to see our name in lights, maybe. Or is that just
and that's where having writing buddies is awesome, because if you can get one or two writing friends who understand what you're going through and who you can text in the middle of the day and be like, oh my God, this is crap, nobody's ever going to read it, that helps.
And ideally, if they're at the same phase in their career, or maybe a little step above you even, that helps too.
Because they're the ones who are going to be like, no, you're amazing. And if they're really good writing buddies, they're the ones who are like, okay, normally you're amazing. This chapter we might want to revisit.
They're the ones who will sit you down over a drink and say, why did you write that in third person? Write that in first person, you moron. And is this the cover that you're using? And then you say yes. And they say no.
Right. Yeah. You got to get to that point. You got to really get to that point of that kind of relationship.
No, I guess.
So a big part of the fear comes from imposter syndrome. And if you aren't familiar with imposter syndrome, I meant to reference the person who gave the speech about it at RWA, and I do not remember her name. I will look that up, because she has a book about it.
There's also an SBF podcast about it, the Mark Dawson Self-Publishing Formula podcast. I cannot remember who did it, but she was awesome. So you could probably just search imposter syndrome in the podcast and find her. But basically, so it's what? It's believing that you don't deserve, that you're wearing like a costume, but that underneath it you, like, somehow you've gotten to this place, but pretty soon everyone is going to look at you and be like, oh my God, like, oh, it's you. No, you don't belong here.
Right. Well, and everybody has that on some level. And while we were preparing for this, I saw two examples of it that just kind of stunned me. And it's outside of the writing world because my husband watches sports all the time. And one of them was Mike Golick, who is a ESPN analyst who has had a radio show, and he played football and all of this kind of stuff. And he was on ESPN, and it was like his last broadcast or something, or close to his last broadcast. And the guy who was broadcasting with him is like, it's been amazing. I've really enjoyed working with you. We're really sorry to see you go, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, somehow I convinced everybody that I deserve to be here.
Yeah. It's like, exactly that. That's what it is.
And then I think it was like the next day, there was another football broadcast, because that is all we watch. There was another football broadcast, and Tony Romo was a part of it. And the person, I should know his name and I can't remember right now, who was talking to him, like the other commentator, was like, hey, there's going to be a football showing up at your house like tomorrow that's very special football, because you are being welcomed into the College Player Hall of Fame. And he was kind of like smiling and all that. And he's like, are you sure it's going to be for me? Are you sure they've got the right address? And of course it is. Of course you have all of these records. You have all of these stats. And writers experience the exact same thing.
And maybe worse, because I don't know a lot about football players and what their common personality types might be, but I know a lot of writers, and I know that common personality types include a lot of introverts and a lot of people who would just prefer not to have attention focused on them. So I think it's even harder for that group of people to step up, get that kind of recognition, and not be like, I'm probably not supposed to be here, Right.
I wandered into the wrong room and they gave me an award. I don't
put
know
on real clothes and all of a sudden you're all looking at me. Like, I would just like to go home.
And so I think the first step is acknowledging that everybody feels that way. And I saw a great meme once that was like, okay, so you are an imposter. And you are the best imposter ever, because look how many people you have fooled. Look how many people believe that you know what you're doing. You are awesome. You keep imposting, which I don't think is a word. Sounds like something you do to food. But
it's the imposter.
And yes. So I think the first step is you've got to acknowledge that everybody's going through this, and it's okay if I don't feel like I deserve this, or it's okay if in this moment I'm like, I'm a total hack, I do not know how to write, but then you let go of it.
Yeah, because you have to write. So
yes,
if that is stopping you, then that is something you can fix. You can look at, whatever it takes. If you have to make a stack of, I'm trying to point at that stack of books. If you have to like make a stack of books to show yourself like, hey, I've done this before. I remember it was hard when I did it here, but I got through it and I can do this. And there's a reason why I'm sitting in front of this keyboard calling myself a writer. Like you have to be capable of giving yourself that little pep talk, or having a couple buddies or a spouse or a partner or a tomcat. I just read Gia's last name. I was going to say wombat, but this came out. Who will say to you, hey, go sit back down and write because you're good at it. You can do it. This is what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, and one of the things I did back when I was first doing contests and I was first getting critiqued and that kind of thing is I kept me a happy file. I kept a file of, this person said that my characterization was great.
It's a great idea.
Or this person said that they, stayed up all night to finish reading. One of the very first compliments that I remember getting from a critique partner was, I went to bed last night thinking about your characters and woke up this morning anxious to finish reading. And I was like, yes.
Great. Yeah.
So you create that in those days when you're sitting there thinking, because this goes with your blog post, which we're going to talk about a little bit, of those days when you're sitting, I just suddenly got very bright, sitting there thinking that I can't do this and it's not going to get better. And everybody's going to find out that I really don't know what I'm doing. That's when you break out your happy file and you're like, no, but this person thought it was okay. Mm-hmm. This person thought it was good. Now, if you are already published, you get somebody to read your good reviews and copy those. You do not read the reviews.
Well, you can. I think it's like a thing that authors do to say that they don't read the reviews. Almost like, I don't know. It's very popular to say that. I've read lots of different opinions about that. And I know now we're off on a tangent, but it always bugs me when people say don't read your reviews. Because I feel like if someone read your book and they took the time to go say some words about it, you probably owe them. At least you should read them. You should not acknowledge them. Unless it was just such a fantastic review, you want to email them separately, Right. But yeah, it's hard though when you have poopy reviews.
I think that really depends on the person.
If they're just going to break you down to the point where you can't continue, then no, don't read your reviews.
Well, and I think that's where you have to honor your process. I think that's where you have to think, right. Okay, so this person can read the reviews, I can't. And again, I know I'm thinking of multi-published, highly successful, broke through the top 50 on Amazon, who they can have 475 5-star reviews and 3 2-star reviews, and they're going to pay attention to those 3.
Well, those are the ones that you will remember.
Right. And that's
nobody likes to be disliked. But for me, and I think there's a few other personalities like this, I've always been super competitive. So if you write me a bad review and tell me what you didn't like, it's almost a challenge. Like, oh, well, then I will fix it in another book, and then you'll see,
And if that's the type of person you are, that is fabulous. That's.
But I do realize that is maybe not the super common writer type. I'm also an extrovert, and most writers aren't.
Yeah, me too. So some steps to fight imposter syndrome as a new writer. The first thing I would say is to learn the craft.
Arm yourself with know-how.
Yes.
And references. That way
you can be like, oh, I know what a character is. I know what a plot is. I know how I want my characters and my plots to behave. So that would be step 1. And then research the industry. If you're planning on being, if you're planning on publishing, you need to know what you're getting into. So again, after you've written the book, you've learned your craft, then you start researching the industry so you know what you're getting into, and find your support network. Yes. Find people who build you up and who are excited for your wins and who tell you, as Nancy said, go sit back down and write some more. You walked away too soon. As an experienced writer, fighting imposter syndrome is a little bit harder, I think, because I think a lot of experienced writers don't feel like they can talk about it. I think that new writers more focus on, like, if you're a new writer and your friend's a new writer, you can be like, okay, we're really not good at this. And your friend's like, no, we're awesome at this. Okay, well, we're going to write this. And you have that camaraderie. I think with experienced writers, there's more competition.
Yeah. And there's also more like, what does she really think about me kind of stuff, which is like competition, but also kind of like, especially the world of romance is very supportive and communal, but there are always those feelings. I think, especially anytime you have a big group of women, that we may be judging each other. And so it's hard to admit if you're struggling a little bit sometimes, especially if you've been successful.
And that's where if you find out really quick who you can trust and who will support you. Yeah. And you've got to lean on those. So, and as you were saying, you honor your success. You get that big stack of books in the back and are like, okay, wait a minute. I have this big stack of books. There's a reason these are here. People bought them. People enjoyed them. And so honor your success. And this is my biggest tip for my experienced writers. You got to recognize where it's going to hit in your process, because it's interesting to me with all of the different levels of writers that I work with that it hits at different times.
Oh, the doubt, you mean?
Yes.
The fear.
That doubt kicks in. And like one writer that I know in particular, if I could keep track of her word count, I would know exactly where I was getting a text that was like, this is crap. Nobody's ever going to read it. I can't publish it. And I'm like, oh, we've hit 30,000 words, huh? Yeah. Okay. And the last time you hit 30,000 words, you had do you want to see the receipts? Because I screenshotted them. So, and so I think if you know that's coming, I think it gives you more of a chance to be like, okay, wait a minute. I know what this feeling is. I know where I'm at.
Yep.
Take a breath, push through it.
Well, so I am not a marathon runner, but I imagine, I used to be a personal trainer, so I would chat sometimes with marathon runners. I've always thought that they were insane, but I imagine it's a lot like that. Like, that coming off the starting line is going to be kind of fun. And then at some point in the middle, it's just going to really suck a lot. And you're going to want to stop and give up and say, why did I ever decide to do this? This was moronic. I'm horrible at this. I'm not going to survive. But same thing, right? Knowing that that's going to happen will help you get through it when it does. And if you've done it a few times, hopefully you've got those little, handles you can pull when it does happen, so that you know how to get through it too. And that way you don't waste a bunch of time with it.
Right. And you've got to honor the process of, okay, so this is where I'm at in the marathon, and know what works for you. Does it work for you to take a break and be like, I'm going to take a day. I'm not going to write. I'm going to walk outside. I'm going to breathe fresh air. I'm going to speak to other humans, put on real clothes, that kind of thing. And then you come back? Or does it work for you to be like, nope, this isn't the spot where I can walk away? Because if I walk away now, I'm not coming back. So
yeah, well, and we should hit writer's block, because I think a lot of these tips kind of play in there too.
Right. So
the difference is that writer's block is something that people use as a term to explain why they aren't writing. And I think Dawn thinks that my blog post this week about that was maybe a little bit of tough love, but I think because of the professional background that I come from, where production has always been a focus. Like I have to write a piece, I have to turn it in. There is no option. I've just always kind of come up with the idea that you push through it, you make it happen. That's your job. And then I've, read writers like Nora Roberts who say very similar things with that very, tough love, gritty kind of voice, and make you really feel like, okay, I don't want to say there is no such thing as writer's block. There are plenty of things that will block you up, but that concept that your muse has left and you cannot continue until he or she returns. That's what I think is a falsehood. Falsehood is false. It is false.
Sure. Yeah, I think knowing and looking at the writer's block, the first thing you kind of need to do when you hit that I don't know what to put on the page next, is you need to explore, why am I blocked?
Yeah, what is wrong with me? Why am I not writing at this moment?
Right. And so is it, I'm blocked because this is hard and I don't like things that are hard. It's a whole lot easier for me to get up and walk away from the story right now than for me to figure out what my next scene should be.
And that is what my writer's block looks like. I will sit here and stare at the words and be like, I don't know. No, I can't fix this. No. And then I'll be like, but maybe if I just research some, how to make goat cheese, then I'll be able to write this scene. And so I'll go down a rabbit hole for 3 hours and then I don't have time to write the scene. And then it's like, oh, that's too bad. I don't have time to write it today. But there's usually something else going on.
Right. And so the question is, are you blocked because it's hard? Are you blocked because of some kind of writing thing? Like you have taken a wrong turn in your plot, your characters have taken a different way than you expected them to, something related to that? Or is your life falling apart and there's something else that you need to be focusing on other than trying to get this book written right in this moment?
Right. Well, and I think writers like me who focus on production and who are kind of the tough love type with themselves run into problems there. Because, for instance, we had, I don't know if you're aware, a global pandemic this year. And my family decided to move across the country. And I was going to co-write some books with an author friend starting in June, which was when we were going to be moving. And she was like, do you think that maybe we should postpone that? Maybe we shouldn't launch until 2021. And I was like, oh, that's silly. No, of course I'll be able to write. It'll be fine. And I just kept saying that. And she, in the meantime, knew quite well that this wasn't going to happen. And so planned other things for herself. But in the meantime, like I really had it in my head that of course this would happen. I could do this. And then I don't know if it was a physical manifestation of like all of the refusal to acknowledge that this was a hard situation that I was doing, but I ended up with this cervical spine problem. And like physically, my body was like, you cannot do this right now.
And we are stopping you.
Yeah. And I think that does happen. If you can't honor your own need to walk away for a while, and a while could be a day, an hour, it could be 3 months or a year, depending on what in the world is going on in your life. And trying to ignore that there's something else going on in your life that you should be dealing with is not a good plan. I will tell you that.
Yes. So if you're blocked because it's hard, you push through it. And there's, I think the blog post is going up tomorrow about some ways to push through it. Mm-hmm. You set a timer and I'm going to do this for the next 15 minutes, something to make yourself keep going. And there's some more tips in that. If you're blocked because nobody's ever going to read it, I'm not good at this. Well, then you keep writing because it's your story and you have a story you want to tell. And if you only tell that story to 2 other people right now, or if you only tell it for yourself, you're still a writer.
Right.
If you are writing, you are a writer. And that's it. That's exactly how that works.
You just have to do it. And like you said, set a timer. If you write 10 words in 20 minutes, you wrote 10 words. That's good.
Right.
And like Gia says, and I have been here, Gia, where you say you feel like all your prose is like Jane can run, Jane, run. That cat is orange. I like the cat. That is me trying to learn how to dictate because of the neck thing that I was talking about. I live in fear that this will happen to me again and I will not be able to write. And so I started learning how to dictate, or trying. And that is what I feel like I'm doing when I'm dictating. But I think because when I talk, I don't speak in the same, not like my prose is super flowery when I write, but my brain connects to my hands in a different way. But the point is, that connects back to what we're talking about, is you still get it down. And so even if I'm dictating, the cloud is gray and there is rain, instead of what I might write, it's my first draft. So I'm getting down the pieces that I need to put in place in order to go back then. And it's much easier to edit what's already there than it is to write something that doesn't exist. So I think the whole point when you're blocked is figure out how much you need to do to just get it down, to get something out, to keep the momentum.
Now I'm going to argue the other side of that.
Okay.
Because
let's do that.
Yeah, we're good at that. I have 2 comments on that. One, to Gia's comment, one of the things you also have to remember, especially with if you're revising and you've been revising and you've been editing, one of the things you have to remember of your words start to sound like Jane can run, run, Jane, run, is because you've read this 800 times.
Yeah.
And somebody else is going to be all new and fresh too. So keep that in mind too. And if that's coming out in your first draft, then you know exactly like what Nancy just said, you're at least getting words on the paper. You're going to go back and revise it, or you're going to get help from a critique partner. You're going to get help from a beta reader. You're going to talk to a story coach. You're going to take steps to fix it. Now, where I'm going to talk about the other side of what Nancy just said is the idea of just getting something on the paper. You can't fix a blank page, that kind of thing. For a lot of us, that works. I am super high extrovert, super high communication. I can just blah stuff out. And then I go back through and I look at it and I'm like, oh, well, that shouldn't be there. And that shouldn't be there. And oh, I like this. There are people, and this is again where you've got to honor your process. And I know clients that we both work with, excuse me, they need that time to think. They need that just spitting it out onto the page doesn't work for them because they get paralyzed by the idea of having to go back and fix it. And so they need the time to marinate it and let it sit there. And so here's where you adjust your thinking on that of you need to, if you're the type of person who needs the time to think things through, that you, in your regular life, you think about things for a long time, you marinate them, let them whirl around in your head for a little while. If you need that time, the shift in the thinking is that thinking time is still writing time. That if you sit, yes, if you sit there and think to yourself about your story, not thinking about your to-do list or thinking about the fact that you've got to call somebody to fix the garage door, but if you're sitting there thinking about your story and thinking about your characters and evaluating plot points and deciding which directions to go, that is still writing time, even though you're not putting words down.
Totally.
Now, also, you need to have a stopping point to that too, though.
Right. You have to have a point at which you actually go do the thing.
This isn't the Matrix. If somebody could just plug us in and it would all download, that would be awesome.
Right.
But we're not there yet.
But,
and so,
sorry, I totally interrupted. Please go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Sorry, I'm very obnoxious. I was just going to say, for some people, like we're kind of talking around the strengths for writers, Clifton Strengths Finders, and what things you need to, what makes you the person you are. And so what you're talking about is intellection, which is my number one, which is funny because I don't like to sit around and think, I just want to put it on the page. But once it's there, that's it. I don't fix it. Like I write pretty clean. My drafts stay pretty much how I build them until Dawn tells me what stuff I have to add or remove. But I think you can tweak your process so that your production, or at least for me, because I also have very high achiever, an executor, I think is one, or something. I'm like, I'm big on producing stuff. So my intellection happens because I've scheduled myself in a way that it happens without me having to worry too much about it. So I read what I wrote this morning, tonight, before I go to bed. And then I go to bed, I read something else, and then I go to sleep. And I think the little monkeys inside my brain do stuff while I'm asleep.
They're playing with it. They're in there doing stuff with it.
They're pushing buttons and moving words around. And then when I get up at 5:00 in the morning and I'm essentially brain dead, I'm not conscious enough to really monitor, whatever my imposter person might be telling me, or my critique partner who is still asleep. And I just do it. And then later I'm like, oh, look, I wrote that this morning. I don't remember writing that. So I think you can tweak your own process to work within your own strengths, basically.
Yes.
Which is not to say that some people don't need to actively sit down and really focus and think about what they're doing.
Yes. And I was kind of thinking about one of my critique partners when we go on writing retreats. Any of you that have ever done coaching with me or even heard me on this podcast, everything just comes out my mouth. And so we would be having like brainstorming sessions and I'd be like, oh, you could do this, or then you could do that, or this could happen. And what if this happens? And we are good enough friends that she will look at me and say, stop. I'm going to go over here, and would physically move away from me because I can't sit next to you and not talk. That's just not going to happen. And so she would like physically go away for like 15, 20 minutes and then come back and be like, okay, so these are the ones I think we should follow. And so I think, yes. And I think there's so much pressure on you have to write every day and you have to just get that rough draft out. And you absolutely should not edit as you're writing. That's not true.
Yeah, no, I agree that none of those, as with all things, there are no rules that are hard and fast. You have to do what works for you.
Yes. And we mentioned Becca Syme, and we do have, she was on the show during last year, and we are giving away her books to somebody who has signed up for the newsletter this month.
Yes. So if you have not joined the newsletter, please be sure to do that and you will be entered to win. I think the bundle right now is 4. If she happens to publish the 5th one before the end of January, then that one will be included as well. But we'll give you e-copies of all of Becca's books, which include things like Dear Writer, You Need to Quit, tell me what the
Dear Writer, Are You in Burnout? Dear Writer, Are You in Writer's Block? Dear Writer, You're Doing It Wrong. And then the last one, which I think is actually out now, is Dear Writer, It's 2020.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to
2021 now.
Yes. So we're going to bundle those, and that's going to be part of our newsletter. And I know we're running short on time, so we're going to wrap it up a little bit. But so if you're stuck in writer's block, some strategies for moving forward. And I see that Julie popped in with one of them of, I moved to a new scene so I can keep writing. Yes, that is absolutely, you do not have to do all these scenes in order. You can absolutely, well, some people do. But I'm working with a client right now that like, there's a beginning scene and then there's a scene at the end and then there's a couple of scenes in the middle and then we go back over here. But that works for her because that's what pops into her mind, and they pop into her mind as fully formed scenes. And then we just work on bridging them. Okay, so you have this scene and you need to know how we're going to get here. Let's make a bridge.
Yep.
So that brainstorming with others, I'm a huge, we know I talk about everything. So, but that's where the story coaching comes in. That's where having a critique partner, and that's where you get to have fabulous phone calls or Zoom calls where your child is walking by, and in my world, it's things like, okay, so after she handcuffs him and puts him in the trunk, my children just walk by every now and then and are like, you have a really weird job, and keep going. So the brainstorming with others, skipping ahead, those are some ways you can work through it if it is a craft problem. If it is a life problem, those are a little harder.
You can still find somebody to talk to who might be able to point out to you that this is a life problem if you haven't gotten there yourself. Hopefully you have those people in your life. If you don't, and you need to brainstorm or be told you have a life problem that you need to address, Dawn and I are here. You can talk to us.
And it is something that's very valid because we feel like we should be able to put everything away and just write. And for some people that works. For some people that is a great escape and they can just push through it. But sometimes it's really hard to push through it when
sometimes it's not good for you to do that.
Yeah, it's not good. And if you're sitting here trying to push through it, but all you're thinking about is the fact that, you have to call your son's teacher at noon to find out why he's failing every single class, or you have
your marriage is falling apart, or
yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of Becca, my first experience with this is I am super high stability. I like things to be the way they're supposed to be. And we talked about when we did our bio last time, we talked about that my mom had passed away and I had all of her stuff that was in the room that is now my office. It was floor to ceiling boxes because I'm an only child. I'm the only relative. I had all of it. And I was trying, because this was a good idea, I was trying to write in the mornings. Like I would write for like 2 or 3 hours and then make myself stop writing and come in here and start going through my parents' things. And finally, because I was in Becca's class at that time, I'm like, okay, so here's the story. I'm not getting any writing done. I tried switching it. I tried like, I'm going to go through boxes for like an hour and then I'm going to start writing. And finally she was like, okay, no. And that's kind of what you need sometimes is she's like, there's no way you're going to be able to focus on either task. You've got to deal with this first.
Yeah.
And I think that's important if you're in writer's block is you've got to look at, okay, I have to deal with this first.
Yeah.
And so I have my gorgeous office that I took 2 weeks and completely stopped writing completely, let the little monkeys in my brain play with stories while I was unpacking things. And giving yourself that freedom, I think, is very important. So if it is a life issue, there's a lot of times you have to deal with that before you're going to be able to be creative at all.
Definitely true. I would just like to say that if you can hear snoring, it is not me. There is a dog in my office. Sorry, you're telling this story about your mom and he's like,
I don't hear him.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that is our writer's block, imposter syndrome. There's a blog going up tomorrow that's going to have more hints and tips on how to work through writer's block.
Yep. And what are we talking about next week? I know we're getting close to February, which I'm excited about because that is the month of romance.
Yes, it's going to be all about the romance. That's going to be fun. Next week, we are talking about productivity and defining your success.
Oh, yeah. So okay. Super important.
And so we're going to talk about some things like what does success look like for you, kind of like what we touched on today. And then more hands-on type, here's some strategies you can use to be more productive. And then the week after that, we're going to talk about setting some realistic goals.
Yes.
Which setting goals right now is just a little crazy, but setting some realistic goals. And then it is February and we've got a whole month talking about romance. And I'm super excited about that.
Yes. So I think some really good kind of laying the groundwork type stuff first, if you can bear with us and make some hard decisions as you're laying out your goals and stuff for the year, then we'll get into some more crafty stuff, starting with romance. Yay.
Yes.
So as always, email us, leave messages here. You can message us on our Facebook page. You can go to our website and book a coaching session if you need someone to brainstorm with, or you just want to talk to one of us about your dog. We do that. Anyway.
And we have the Story Strategy Saloon. If you are not a member of the private Facebook group, come hang out at the saloon with us.
Yes. So anyway, please do check in with us. Let us know how things are going. If there are topics that you are really interested in hearing about, we're always open for that. Or guests that you would really like to see us chat with. Okay. I hope you guys have a great week. And I guess we're almost at the weekend.
Yes, one more day.
I apologize for all the technical difficulties. Hopefully next week I'll have it. Probably won't have it together, but we'll try.
We'll try.
All right.